How do you grieve someone who's still alive? When you go no contact, it feels like grieving the living, a loss with no funeral, no closure, and no space to grieve. Today, we're going to talk about that silent grief and how to heal from it. Welcome to the Black Sheep Diaries. I'm Dr. Michelle Scoggins, psychologist and author of Unleash the Black Sheep Within. Today's episode is going to be all about grieving the living, letting go without goodbye. This is one of the most painful experiences many Black Sheep face. Going no contact isn't just a boundary, it's a loss. You're grieving someone who's still out there living their life, but who you can no longer reach. And that grief is real. For any of you that have went no contact with family or considering no contact with family, this episode is definitely for you. When we talk about grieving the living, we're talking about the grief that comes with choosing distance, boundaries, or no contact. And most often, most Black sheeps start with boundaries. When the boundaries aren't respected, they choose a little bit of distance. And oftentimes the distance also isn't respected. And so you're left with no option but to go no contact. This looks similar to grief from death. You feel the weight, the sadness, the loss. But unlike death, there's no ritual, no closure, and often no support from others. In fact, people may judge you. You may have found this yourself, and I know I found it myself, that people will say things to me like, "That's still your mom," or "Those are still your parents. How could you do this to them? How can you betray them?" That blood is thicker than water, right? We've heard all of these things before, but oftentimes no one really understands from the Black sheep's perspective what it actually took from us to have to go that far in order to have our respect for ourselves, to have clarity, to have peace in our lives, that we've had to make these tough decisions. By doing this, that makes your grief feel invisible and lonely. But let me say this clearly to you today. Your grief is valid. I'm going to talk to you today about stages of grief, and grieving the living is very much like traditional grief. It comes in waves and stages. You may go through this every single day. Some may be stronger than others at times, and there's going to be times like holidays and birthdays and things like that that are going to make the stages that you're going through kind of wax and wane. But first, you're going to feel denial. You're going to say things to yourself like, maybe things weren't that bad. Maybe I overreacted. Of course, you're going to have anger. You're going to feel like, why couldn't they have just loved me the way that I needed? And this feeling is very typical, and often you've felt this throughout your life, and it started in childhood. Then there's that feeling of bargaining that you may think, let me reach out one more time. Maybe it'll be different. Maybe the distance has helped them to understand how important I am in their life, or how important I could be in their life. And then there is clearly the sadness that we feel, that deep heaviness of realizing they can never be who you hoped for them to be. And this is something that the Black sheep experiences throughout their life. And they experience it even in the stages of no contact, that you just wish that they could be something else. And we'll talk about this in other episodes of how to grieve the parent you didn't receive, because this is very helpful in repairing and renewing your own self and your own sense of self. And lastly, you're going to feel acceptance. Now, acceptance isn't going to come all the time. It is going to wax and wane like the others. And even when you've gotten to a place of acceptance for some time, you can backslide somewhat into some of these other emotions and feelings. The acceptance is that painful but freeing step of letting go and choosing your own peace over everything else. And again, this healing isn't linear. You're going to go through these stages again and again. Be patient with yourself. Be loving with yourself. Be all of the things for yourself that your parents were never for you. And this is how the healing stages progress, is that you become that parent in your life that you always needed but never received. One of the hardest parts of grieving the living is that society doesn't always understand this part. People will tell you to forgive. People will encourage you to reconcile with your family, or they'll just say to stay in contact with them because you know how they are. They just are like that. That's how they've always been. Or they'll tell you things like, well, family is everything. Family's blood is thicker than water. And so they'll encourage you for their own sense of feeling comfortable. They'll kind of urge you or push you towards reconciling or forgiving or staying connected with the family. But let me tell you this, they don't live with your story. They don't carry the wounds that you carry. They haven't had the experiences that you've had. And most often for the black sheep, no one truly understands where they're coming from because their parents typically are nice to other people. I can say that about my own family, is that people in general, my friends, really like my family. I like my family. They're good at times. However, I'm still the black sheep. I am still the one that has been disrespected. I am still the one that they don't see as an individual on her own that is an adult and needs an adult relationship with their parents. And so this is where society kind of gets it wrong with us. They see your family and your parents in particular from their lens, and their lens is much different than yours. Another challenge is the ambiguous loss. Unlike death, this person is still alive, which means holidays, birthdays, and milestones can trigger the ache of what could have been. It feels like the wound just keeps getting reopened again and again, and you will have these experiences throughout your life. I'm about to turn 50. Yes, you heard me right, 50. And I wish that my family could be with me. However, that is not in my future. That is not part of what 50 is going to look like for me. And I'm coming to accept those things. But that is how we as black sheep experience this loss, because we can't get past milestones and we can't get past birthdays and holidays without these people still being alive. And don't get me wrong, no one around here is wishing that they weren't alive. I hope my family is well and healthy and living their best life. I just can't be part of it at this time. So the big question is, how do you really heal from this kind of grief? Now, that's a complex question and it's going to be a convoluted answer, let me tell you, because grief also doesn't happen in a linear fashion. Healing isn't going to happen in a linear fashion either. It is going to take time. It is going to take love. It is going to take self-compassion, self-awareness. But first, you have to allow yourself to grieve without apology, without feeling bad about the hurts, without feeling bad about the separation. You're not dramatic. You're not selfish. You're just grieving. Second, I would like you to create some rituals. Maybe you might write a letter that you never send, describing your grief, describing your pain, describing what you really needed in this relationship that you didn't receive. Maybe you're going to light a candle as a symbol of a renewal in your life. You may find your own symbolic goodbye, but whatever it is, find a ritual that fits for you and have that as a sense of moving on and having peace with this situation. These rituals give your grief structure. They give it dignity. They give it that sense of a funeral like we have for those who have passed on. Third, I want you to find community. For me, I have found community to be very important. Whether that's a trusted friend, a therapist, or even a podcast like this one, you need spaces where your grief is understood, where there are people who are like you and who help you to get through those tough times. Finally, I want you to reframe your story. Letting go is not cruelty. It's survival. It's choosing your peace over ongoing harm and chaos. It is saying that I am most important and my story is going to reflect that. Now I want to share a little bit of my own reflection with you. What it felt like when I was burying someone who was still breathing. The weight of that crushing all at once at first. But over time, I realized in letting go, I wasn't burying them. I was finally breathing for myself. And actually, I could be very happy for my family. I let the anger go. I let the resentment go. I let all of those things actually be buried. And instead, I hope that we can live a happy life, just a separate one. And there's no angry feelings or ill will toward them. So let me offer you this quick journal prompt. I want you to write down what you wish you could have said in this goodbye that you'll never have. Honor those words. Remember those words. Practice those words. Even if they never leave your journal, that's what they're for. So I want to remind you today, you've been listening to the Black Sheep Diaries, and we were talking about grieving the living. And this doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. If today's episode resonated with you, follow the show. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Find your Black Sheep community and leave a review so other Black Sheep can find their way here too. Until next time, keep setting those boundaries, keep speaking your truth, and keep writing your own story. And remember, from one Black Sheep to another, I love you.